first of all, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. My name is Angelina Vrisevic, and I'm a program manager at the US-UK Fulbright Commission. I guess some of you might have watched some of my webinars which I ran last year. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, I work on the program which funds the UK students who would like to go to the US to do a postgraduate qualification. So I'm heavily involved in recruitment, the selection process, promotion, and work with our nominated grantees. Very briefly, today we will be focusing on our partner awards. I will be running a webinar later next month, which will be looking specifically at how to submit a competitive application to the Fulbright Commission. But today we will be learning more about our partner awards. And just to quickly explain what we actually mean by partner awards. So normally, when we talk about awards, we talk about either the all disciplines category or our partner awards. So the all disciplines category is a number of grants which can be used or applied to any postgraduate program anywhere in the US at any institution. So as a result of that, our all disciplines awards are extremely competitive. Now, we offer a variety of really exciting partner awards, which are offered in partnership with either various organizations or US universities. So when people ask me why or kind of where they should start from, I always say, have a look at our partner awards. First of all, because they are restrictive in the sense that they tend to be either at a specific institution or both at a specific institution and kind of focused on a specific academic discipline, we receive fewer applications per grant, which means that they are less competitive. Well, most of them, and also our partners tend to offer much more generous funding. So that's another reason why I would very strongly encourage you to start from looking at our partner awards. In terms of the requirements, this is something we'll be talking about in more detail during the 3 hours we have today, but I do want to remind you that you should review our country-specific instructions, which are available on our website. So if you are applying for a partner award, you need to make sure that you both meet Fulbright Commission requirements and the partner requirements. So it's not either or, it's both. Also, one of the queries I receive a lot is whether people can apply for the all disciplines grant and a partner award. Unfortunately, the answer is no. So you have to choose which award to apply for, either one of the partner awards or the all disciplines grant. And also very quickly about the event format today. So we're running this event for the first time, so please bear with us. Hopefully it should all work. I do have my colleague Tom here who will be providing some tech support to me in case I suddenly disappear. So each partner has a 20-minute slot to introduce themselves, talk a little bit about the award, talk about the work they do. So that's about 7-10 minutes. And then we have about up to 10 minutes for your questions. So to submit your questions, please use the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. You can submit questions anonymously. I will be keeping an eye on that. But also, please make sure that you specify which award you are asking about, so that obviously we know, what we're talking about. And also, one final thing is we are running 2 events at the same time right now. So just to confirm, just to reiterate for those of you who have just joined us, this event is focused on postgraduate awards. So if you're an academic who wants to go to the US to either teach or do research, this is not the right event for you. So there is a different link on our website, and you need to sign up there to go to the webinar which my colleague is running right now. So this event is specifically for those of you who would like to do a postgraduate qualification in the US. So a master's program, a PhD program, an independent research placement after your master's, or a research placement as part of your PhD in the UK. So these are the awards we will be talking about. And also just to remind you, I don't know if you've seen the schedule on the website. So unfortunately, not every single partner is able to join us today. So the majority likely are. So please have a look at the schedule. I do encourage you to stay with us for as long as you can. We will be talking about a lot of different things, including things like admission tips. So regardless of even whether you decide to apply for Fulbright in the end, you may find this session extremely helpful. So that's the plan for today. We are going to be here until 6 p.m. And without further delay, I think we can start with our first guest. So we've got Rob from Global Wales. Just give me a moment. I will, Rob, allow you to turn your camera on. Excellent.
Hello.
Hi, Rob.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, brilliant.
Marvelous. And is my thing the right way round? Sorry, everyone, just because for me, it's mirror imaging and it doesn't look the right way round.
It looks good to me, so I don't know what it's the right way, but it looks fine.
Amazing. Cool. So shall I?
Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Hi, everyone. So I'm Rob and I work for Global Wales. I am going to do a really quick presentation, and this is mainly so I don't forget what I'm talking about and make sure that I cover what I believe to be some of the key points that I want to talk you through today. So bear with me today. Lovely. So hopefully you can see that. Okay. Cool. There we go. Bro, so I'm here today and I'm going to talk to you a bit about the Fulbright Postgraduate Awards that we offer here. So, like I said, my name's Rob and I work for Unis Wales as a market manager for the USA. And we work very closely with Fulbright on incoming students. So that's US students that want to come and study at a Welsh university, but we also work really closely on outward mobility, and that's people like yourselves that are interested in going to study overseas in the US. So like I said, a little bit of a background about the bigger picture kind of stuff that we're involved in Global Wales, and then what is actually available and a few helpful hints that I think might help you in your application. So we work with the Fulbright Commission. Welsh Government is where we receive our funding from. And then in Global Wales, there's kind of two arms. So Global Wales is the body that are awarding scholarships. And then Study in Wales is our kind of student-facing arm. So when I go to the US, I go there as Study in Wales to try and bring students over to come and study in Wales and talk about how great Wales is, our beautiful castles that you can see. And I'm sure you're all well aware of this as you are here today to listen about the award that we have on offer. So just to put a little bit of it into context, so the Welsh Government strategy at the moment is looking into trade and investment overseas, and parts of this is involved in tourism and like Visit Wales. Other parts are in food and drink, so exports around Welsh lamb, exports around the whiskey and gin that we've got here that are fantastic. Another arm of this is Wales.com and Creative Wales, knowing that Wales is a booming creative sector, knowing that filmmaking programs here being made all the time. Cardiff Bay the other day was just full of people down there filming, don't know what for, but it was very busy. And then my arm, which is the education, Study in Wales. And it's really pulling that all together really to show that kind of identity of Wales and what we are. Now, on the next slide, we talk about Global Wales help support inward and outward mobility. And I'm sure most of you are probably aware of the Welsh Government investing heavily into this. So they've just brought about the International Learning Exchange, which is currently going through the project management phase of figuring out what does this mean. So this is an extra, I believe, nearly £70 million investment that is there to help students with outward and inward mobility. It's there to kind of top up where the Turing scheme that is available across England and Wales kind of falls short of that Erasmus scheme that we used to have. So the International Learning Exchange, once that's kind of put through the motions and figured out, then that's what that will do to top up. And part of that funding will then be used to be allocated towards the Fulbright Awards that I'm going to talk about. So I've put here that international studies should not just be about those who can afford it, but though it should be accessible for all. And that's something that we believe at Global Wales, and also something that is believed really strongly by Welsh government. And there's just a few little points that I've put up there. So a couple of them are regarding undergraduate study, but some of them about 5% higher wage earners after studying abroad, 24% less likely to be unemployed. I think are really key stats just to keep in the back of your mind if you're still umming and ahhing about whether you want to go abroad to study for your masters. So on to the main crux of the matter then. So we've got two awards, the Global Wales Postgraduate Awards. One is the Welsh General Award, and this is one award for a master's degree at any accredited US university in any discipline. And it's open to British citizens who have lived in Wales for at least 5 years and intend to return to Wales. And that's a really key point that I'll talk about in a sec. It's up to $45,000 and it's a contribution towards the first year of tuition fees and maintenance costs in the USA. The other award that we've got is the Welsh Visiting Student Researcher Award, a bit of a mouthful. And this is open for one visiting student researcher, provides funding towards a semester-long research project. And the key thing for this is any British citizen enrolled in a PhD program at a university in Wales. And this is up to $25,000 to cover general maintenance costs. So really good amount of money there for the semester abroad to help you in a research or what you might want to take to go study for the semester overseas. So a couple of hints that I've just put down is about do your research. So your more well-known institutions are going to be very competitive. So things like Harvard, Princeton, Yale, super competitive for applications and for Fulbright scholars. So think about other institutions. And just as like an example, I was looking at going to study for my master's in the US. I was looking into international relations masters, specific interest in genocide studies, and Yale is amazing for that. But through my research, I found that actually South Florida is also really good for it, and some other universities in New York State and Massachusetts. So keep your eyes peeled, have a look around, Google it if you're unsure. Costs and additional scholarships is also something. So it's also worth considering the costs of studying. So the funding is for 1 year of a 2-year master's, but many US institutions have really generous scholarship packages and financial aid. So there is a potential that through applying through those schemes, it is actually then cheaper than staying to study in the UK, because you could end up somehow working it that you get some reduced education costs. Your application, and I kind of touched on this in the last slide about you returning to Wales if you're coming for the Masters Award, your application should make reference to the benefits to Wales and explicitly talk about coming back to Wales when you finish and how this Masters is then going to help you. Another simple thing, probably obvious, but read about your current and past Fulbright scholars from Wales. So Rosie Ellis at the University of Florida, Marina Morwina, both of them are going off, I believe, this year to study in the US. So have a look at their profiles and have a read about what they're up to and where they're going. And I just wanted to refer back to this really quickly, because I think this is key, is that as the UK, as Wales, we spend a lot of time recruiting students from overseas to come and study, but it is also about opening up that mobility and that option for outward mobility. So this is a student from Vietnam said that you get the opportunity to thrive, and I strongly believe that going to study overseas, you also do get that opportunity to thrive. So yeah, I think it's a fantastic opportunity, and especially through these scholarships. So Diolch, thank you for listening, and I will stop sharing my screen and open it up.
Hi Rob, thanks very much for your presentation. And I just want to follow up briefly. So you made a really good point about reaching out to Fulbright alumni or the current Fulbright grantees. And we are piloting this year a new scheme which is called the Fulbright Ambassadors. So you can actually chat to our grantees and alumni through our website. And Rosie Ellis, who's a Global Wales alumna who is currently in the US. She's one of our Fulbright ambassadors. So I would definitely encourage you to talk to her about things like studying at a non-Ivy League institution, making sure that your funding works, and about how to secure additional funding. So please do go and talk to our Fulbright ambassadors. They would be very happy to answer your questions. Now we have about 10 minutes to take questions, and I can see that questions are coming in. So just to remind you, please use the Q&A box to submit your questions. These questions are submitted anonymously. Also, so the webinar is being recorded, and we will be sharing the recording of all the presentations with those who have signed up at some point later, probably towards the end of the week, maybe next week. And let me just have a quick look at the questions we're getting here. Rob, can you talk a little bit about the importance or the requirement of being able to speak Welsh? From the Fulbright Commission's perspective, this is not a requirement. I would say pretty much everyone we've interviewed for this award, I think, speaks Welsh. This is not something we would necessarily, as I said, this is not a requirement. But Rob, I wonder if there is anything you would like to add on this.
No, I would like to say it's not a requirement. It's open for everyone. For example, I would be eligible for it. I've lived in Wales for well over 5 years now, studied here, but I still don't speak Welsh, unfortunately. So yeah, it's open to you whether you speak Welsh or you don't speak Welsh.
Thank you. I can see that we're getting questions which are not related to this award. So just to reiterate, this webinar is specifically about partner awards. So I'm not going to ask Rob about the J1 visa. Right, so
I am grateful for that, thank you.
I wonder whether you could talk a little bit about this whole kind of requirement to sort of like come back to Wales, how, whether there are any preferences for any particular kind of academic areas. For instance, you touched upon tourism. Would you say that you favor applications which kind of focus on the areas where you're kind of planning to promote international and global Wales, or whether you would say that, any kind of discipline, any academic area will be suitable as long as obviously people explicitly demonstrate their intention to come back to Wales and how they will use their knowledge to sort of benefit Wales?
Yeah, I'll say that's a really fantastic point, actually. So this is an all disciplines award. It is open for you, whatever subject you go and study. But I will say, as a huge kind of hint when you're looking into this, is have a look over the Welsh Government's programme for government over the next 2021 to 2026. That is a really useful document, and that just like have a look at what the priorities are, have a look at what the government hope to achieve, and then in your application, if you can tie back what you're going to study with any of those points, it's major ticks. So for me, I'm just thinking out loud here. If I was going to study, let's say, a master's in filmmaking in the US, and then talk about how that would come and support the creative economy that Wales is creating here, and the importance of learning different skills from overseas and bringing them back to Wales to then teach other filmmakers and people that want to get into the industry in Wales. So that's just one kind of like basic level example. But yeah, have a look over the programme for government. And just think about how what you want to go and study can relate back to those areas.
And also, I'll touch upon a question. There is a specific question about law. So I think Rob has just answered your question, but you can do any discipline, as long as you demonstrate how that relates to Wales, basically. So law, you can do law as well. Again, this is obviously quite a broad question, so it depends on what exactly you want to be doing. But just to give you a few examples, so for instance, the two grantees we have this year, one of them is doing, I think, international history, global history, so basically something history related, and the other person is a PhD student who works, who's an engineer, and they work within the renewable energy sector. So as you can see, these are two completely different areas and academic disciplines, but both of them demonstrated in their application and during the interview that they intend that basically their project, first of all, is inspired by Wales, and secondly, that they are planning to come back to Wales, and that they're planning to use that knowledge and expertise to benefit Wales in the long term. Right, so any other questions specifically for Rob about Global Wales, or if you are from Wales? Also, just to sometimes some of the questions I get regarding eligibility. So not everyone, so some of our applicants are Welsh and they study or have studied at Welsh universities, but unless you are interested in the PhD grant, you don't need to be studying in a Welsh university if you're interested in the Masters Award. So for example, Rosie Ellis, I'm pretty sure she went to a non-Welsh university. Again, all of this information is available on our website, so please feel free to have a look. Yes, right, let me have another look at the questions.
I think if you have a look at the questions, I think that's a really important point to make, actually, that you don't have to be studying in Wales to receive it, but equally, if like myself, you've studied, you've done your undergraduate, you've taken a couple of years out, then you've hit your 5 years and you would be then eligible if you're still living in Wales. So don't be afraid if you're not Welsh, but you are living and studying in Wales and you've hit that 5-year mark.
And this is specifically for the masters. Well, the PhD one, you need to be studying at a Welsh university. So yeah, just to make kind of sure, because this is different for the two awards. So
yeah, and I'd say with the PhD one, it's quite interesting to look into certain areas. So semiconductors is a huge area in Wales. Again, the creative economy is a huge area in Wales. If you think about the UNESCO site that's just been awarded for the area in North Wales, looking at the slate industry, thinking about how you can tie that all in and studying for a semester overseas and how that can enhance your research or PhD and then bring it back to Wales is really interesting as well.
And also regarding funding, so for the PhD award, it's up to $25,000, which may seem like not a lot of money, but very often PhD students are not charged tuition fees as such in the US. So sometimes it's like a one-off fee payment, sometimes it's literally nothing. So it can end up being a very, very generous award. So please don't get put off by the fact that it's a lower number compared to all the other awards we have on the website.
Like you say, I think institutions in America get a lot out of having visiting researchers come. And I know when I was working at a university, we used to host visiting researchers for free because you get so much out of it. And it just really expands your horizon and your research.
Okay, so Rob, thank you very much for your presentation. I think we are done with questions about Global Wales. So once again, thanks for joining us. Thanks for being our first presenter. And we're going to let you go. I do have a couple of other random questions which I will be taking while we're waiting for our next speaker. But once again, thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for everyone, and thanks for listening, and take care. Thanks.
Thanks, bye-bye. Okay, so just to confirm once again, this webinar is about partner awards. When we do have a short break, I can take some of your questions which are not partner specific. So I have a question about working or doing some sort of training after your program on the J1 visa. You can do so before coming back to the UK. and you can complete the 2-year home residence requirement after completing your post-academic training. But normally all of this is confirmed and sort of finalized when you're already in the US. So we are not in a position to provide very detailed information on that. But in principle, yes, this is possible, and a lot of our grantees do that. In terms of how the pandemic has affected us, well, it has affected us. It has made our work quite difficult, but we keep doing our work. We keep sending students abroad. We keep welcoming American students over here in the UK. So we are planning to, especially next year, to go as normal. So visas are being issued. Obviously, there are additional requirements such as tests, and sometimes you have to quarantine. There are different universities have different requirements regarding vaccination status. So there are kind of all those additional levels of administration, bureaucracy, but we continue working and we continue sending people abroad. So I'm sure we will continue doing so next year as well. In terms of the number of scholarships, we will be talking about each partner award sort of separately. So with Global Wales, we offer 2 scholarships. With the majority of partners, we offer 1 scholarship only. We used to offer a couple for a few partner awards, but that has now changed. Please do have a look online just to double check, but the majority of partner awards are 1 grant only. With the all disciplines, it depends on our budget. It's I would say, and that's like a very preliminary answer, it tends to be between 10 and 15, so it can be 12, it can be 14. So this is how many we tend to offer every year. But despite the fact that it tends to be more than 10, our all discipline scholarships are more competitive than our partners. So as I said earlier today, if you are in a position to apply for a partner award, please do so, because your chances of at least getting an interview are much higher. Also regarding 1-year LLM, there are different degrees, so it's up to you what you apply for. We will be, one of our partners will be joining later today, so that will be Indiana University, and they offer funding specifically for the 1-year LLM award, so that may be of interest to you. Right, okay, so our next speaker will be joining us in a couple of minutes. So you probably have a moment to grab a drink or have a quick break if you want to. And also just to confirm that the applications are now open, so you can submit an application online, and the deadline for doing so is the 8th of November, 5 p.m. UK time. Oh, excellent. I think our next partner has joined us. Let me just make them a co-host. Hi, Pippa, are you here?
I am. Should I put on my video?
If you don't mind.
No, your instruction was to wait for the introduction.
Yes.
So I have waited. Hi, Angelica. Angelina, sorry.
All right. Right. So, yeah, when you're ready, you please start.
Okay, great. So I know I've just got 10 minutes, so I thought it might be useful for me to kind of give a bit of background, obviously, on myself, on the program that I did with Fulbright, which was the MBA at Harvard Business School, and then also share a little bit about my time at Harvard, and then make sure that I leave 10 minutes for questions. You know, I'll my own intro may take less than 10 minutes. I want to try and make sure that if there are questions, I have lots of time to answer them. So I will do that. My name is Pippa Lamb. I am I work in venture capital. As well as having been an alumna of the Fulbright and the Harvard Business School prize or award at Fulbright, I'm also a trustee of the British Friends of Harvard Business School, which awards this particular award with Fulbright. So I'm also probably positioned to talk a little bit about the kind of administrative side if there are people who are considering this prize. But so yeah, a bit about the course itself. So it is a 2-year program, full-time in the US. Some of the applicants or students on the course do joint degrees. So that can, I think, go anything from 3-year course up to maybe 4 or 5 years if you're doing it joint with a medical degree. But the majority of the MBA program is just 2 years. The prize with Fulbright, or keep calling it prize, the award covers just the Harvard Business School part. But as mentioned, you can combine it with a joint degree. MBA, obviously that stands for Masters of Business Administration. So the general theme of the course is obviously around something to do with commerce, business, but in your second year, you can actually do your own independent project, which you choose to do with a professor, and it can be pretty much on any topic that you like, and you don't need to decide that topic until second year, or even in fact elect to do one until later. I didn't do one. I thought I was going to do one, but I actually found there was so much stuff on the course that I wanted to cover that was already provided that I didn't actually do a separate project. I just focused on kind of the core program. And at Harvard Business School, there are usually between 2 to 5 Fulbrighters a year. In my year, there were 4 of us, and it just varies depending on, I guess, the size of the applicant pool. A little bit more generally about the Harvard Business School program. There are around 930 students a year, so it's a pretty big class. There are actually slightly less in the current batch just because of the delay and the offer to defer that they gave people due to COVID. And of the 930 applicants that are admitted, it comes from around 9,000 applicants. So it is a pretty competitive course to get into. It's highly international. So I just looked up the statistics earlier for the current ones, and it's around 60%, 67% USA, and 3% Canada. But then of the remaining 30%, it's sort of made up of 10% Europe, 11% Asia, 6% Mexico, Central and South America, and then, you know, Africa, Middle East, and Oceania make up the remainder. In terms of the background of the other students that might be on the class, in your class, you know, around 26% of the students have come from what they've called a business and commerce background. I'll tell you about mine in a second. Around 19% did economics, 25% did engineering, 15% did maths and physical science. But then also there are, you know, people who came from either humanities or social sciences also makes up around 14%. And then the other, you know, thing that I think is quite different about doing an MBA is that generally students will have done at least 2 years of work experience. So I had actually done 5 years of work experience, actually almost 6, before I decided to apply for the master's program. And the reason that they encourage that is because the MBA really does draw upon the experience, the industry experience of people in the class. And in terms of people's backgrounds, before doing the master's program, around 15% were in consulting, so management consulting, a McKinsey type place. Around 16% were in venture capital or private equity, and 11% were in finance. So there obviously is kind of quite a big weight to business, obviously. But you also have, you know, now I think 13% of people come from tech, 11% come from manufacturing, 5% were in the military. And then you have, you know, I'd say quite a lot of former entrepreneurs or current entrepreneurs who decide to do the 2-year program. In terms of balance as well, I just think it's important to say that they are, you know, Harvard has been very focused on making it a pretty diverse set, and at the moment the current class is 44% women in terms of the ratio, which, you know, of course can still get better, but I think it certainly has come a long way from where it was, you know, many decades ago. And just a couple of last things, you know, to get in, you do have to sit the GMAT or the GRE. I've actually realized that in the last few years, the GRE has become more popular to do for the MBA. I think previously you really had to do the GMAT, but now around 12% of people each year are actually sitting a GRE instead, which some people prefer. Maybe I'll just also, you know, pause there and then maybe, you know, give you a little bit about my background. So I read East Asian Studies at Oxford for my undergrad degree, which is really a combination of a beginner's language program and sort of cultural history, economics, social science type studies all around kind of China, history and the economics. When I graduated, I spent about a year in the British Foreign Office, and so and then went into finance and spent 5 years at JP Morgan, first in the UK and in China or in Hong Kong afterwards. So I think for me, the reason Fulbright was very impactful is because, yes, I was going to go and do a business school program, but the draw of Fulbright was somehow allowing me to tap into a network of students at the Harvard Business School who were interested in sort of, I guess, the wider international politics and current affairs side of things. And certainly, you know, the benefit to me of being a Fulbrighter at Harvard Business School was that it did offer me that network when I arrived and a bit of a support system on the ground. You know, a few things that I was encouraged to do by the Fulbright Award and also by some of my peers that I was on the course with was to get involved with some of the 2016 US election that was happening. You know, it was myself and another British Fulbrighter who were quite keen to take advantage of being in the US as a student during an election year. And, you know, we sort of went out on the campaign trail, you know, learned about how some of our US counterparts were sort of working on, it was the Hillary campaign at that time. And also I got quite involved in some of the events at the Kennedy School of Government, which is Harvard's School of Public Policy. So yeah, I think and the other experiences that I had through Fulbright at Harvard were being invited to events nationwide that again enabled me to sort of leave the sort of bubble that I was in at the Harvard Business School, which very much is quite bubble-like because it's an intense program, and actually go out and travel around the US and meet people who were doing courses from totally different backgrounds, which I really enjoyed as well. Just to kind of update you where I am now. So during the course, I did a couple of internships at 2 startups, and I ended up moving into venture capital when I graduated. So I now am a partner at a fund where I focus on early stage tech investing and startups. And so the other good thing about the MBA is that it really gives you the chance to kind of career pivot if that's what you're interested in doing. Yeah, so I think I'm pretty much at 10 minutes. So I don't know, Angelina, if you would like me to take questions, or I could just, you know, I can just pause there for a minute.
Well, Peter, thank you very much for this fantastic presentation. It's really great to have you today because you are the only one who comes from the partner side and as an alumnus. So your experience is, you know, absolutely invaluable. And I have a question about basically why you decided to go to Harvard. So had you considered other MBAs or other institutions before you chose Harvard, or like was it your only choice and you knew that you wanted to go to Harvard or not? So how did you get there basically?
Great question. I had always dreamed of going to Harvard Business School. I had some friends from my undergrad who had applied and actually, you know, they'd loved it. And I considered going earlier and had actually gone to visit the school about the minimum usually is 2 years after undergrad before you do the master's. So I'd actually visited 2 years after I'd finished my undergrad program to check it out. And really fell in love with the campus and the program, and it's a particular type of class that they champion, which is a case study method, where you basically spend your time doing short case studies about different businesses or different leaders' decisions, and I really liked that. So I did always know that I wanted to go to Harvard. So and I actually had looked up the Fulbright Awards years before actually I got around to applying. So it was really it was initially the only one I applied to, but I did have a plan that if I hadn't got in to Harvard, I was going to probably reapply to, you know, there are, I think 2 or 3 other schools that I was quite curious about their programs. You know, one of them was INSEAD, which is a 2-year program. Sorry, it's a 1-year program, but it's split between Singapore and France. And I thought that was really fascinating. But no, Harvard was really kind of my main choice.
Thank you. And I just want to clarify here. So I said earlier today that you can apply for 1 award only. So with the British Friends of Harvard Business School, if you're considering applying for 2 more institutions than just Harvard Business School, you can apply for the all disciplines category. And then if you do get into Harvard, we will consider you for this particular award. We also have a different timeline, so please have a look on our website. So the deadline for this particular award is, I think, Monday, 4th of April, 2022. So one of the key requirements is to have been accepted to HBS. So please keep that in mind. And now we've got a very different question. So regarding funding, so basically, are there any tips on how to secure funding from HBS? Would you say that people are able to work alongside their studies? Because obviously the program is very intense. So I always advise people not to expect or not to rely heavily on that expectation that they will be able to work. Kind of, do you have any experience to share? Would you say that your classmates worked, or kind of how common is that?
I would say the more common tact is to apply for financial aid from Harvard itself. So in addition to the potential award that you could claim from the Fulbright, if you get that award, there is a pretty robust financial aid process at Harvard. So, you know, just thinking chronologically, when you apply and when you get in, there is a financial aid deadline around the same time as sort of the Fulbright deadline, actually. And they've now got rid of round 3 of applications, which mean that you either apply academically in, I think, from September, October, which is round 1, or in December, which is round 2, December, January, round 2. So you will know if you've already been admitted when, you know, you're, as you just said, for the award. But then also the financial aid deadline from Harvard itself comes in around then too. So they have a very large endowment and do really prioritize trying to give needs-based fellowships where possible. So definitely, you know, if you are thinking about Harvard, do get your ducks lined up and make sure you apply, because a lot of the friends I had there were on some sort of financial aid package. In addition to that, just to kind of round out the other, you know, funding, you know, it's quite hard to avoid taking some sort of a student loan as well. I did take a student loan, which I drew down on mostly in my 2nd year. And for international students, there are only a couple of choices that you can pursue. One is the Harvard Students, I think it's called the Credit Union. And then there's a couple of private companies as well. But obviously you would only do that once you know the kind of outstanding amount that you're going to have after the financial aid. And then lastly, when it comes to work, I didn't know anyone that was actively balancing a regular job while they were there. I think it would be difficult, given the intensity of the program, to rely on a regular sort of job whilst you were there. Potentially you could do odd things here and there, but I would definitely say it would be difficult given the amount of time that the program sort of requires from you.
Thank you. And I have the last question. So could you please talk a little bit about your involvement in the British Friends of Harvard Business School? So how has that happened? Is there some sort of like an expectation that you will be involved in that work? But basically about what you're doing at the moment.
Sure. So the British Friends of Harvard Business School was a charity that was set up to help fund financially needy students to go to Harvard in the future. And obviously we've partnered with Fulbright. I got involved with it out of choice as opposed to an expectation. I was reached out to by the British Friends about a year and a half ago after I graduated, and I was living back in London, and for me it was just a chance to give back to the institution that had enabled me to go to Harvard. So for me, I run kind of communications and events, and we're actually about to start doing some events around admissions and applications for this year. It is a separate organization to both Fulbright and Harvard Business School, but obviously we sit between the two. So it's been a great opportunity for us to involve former students, and certainly it's not an expectation, but a lot of the current board of trustees are recipients of the award, and if not, they all were Harvard Business School alums.
Thank you. And the final question, I think people have covered that. So the MBA is 2 years normally, unless you want to do a dual degree, which can take longer. Is this right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in terms of the funding, so you get a specific amount of money, and it's up to you how you allocate it in terms of whether you spend it. So basically the money goes to HBS directly. So our award goes to HBS directly, and we can split it. So we can do 50-50 depending on sort of like your priorities or your preferences.
Yes, it is divided across the 2 years. When I was there, it was actually all, it was pretty much all given in the first year, because the idea was to decrease the chance that you would need to take on a loan until later and sort of defer that. But actually, it's now more split across the 2 years, because we realized that actually it's just the tuition fees are quite high. So it makes sense to be able to split it as well. But this is all being kind of considered at the moment as well.
Thank you. And also about finances, people are asking whether you felt that you had received enough to cover your expenses. But I understand that you've mentioned that you did have to take out a loan, and I know that this is quite common among the students who go to HBS.
It is a needs-based award. So I had potentially, the award that I got was potentially slightly less than some of the other financial awards. I worked in finance for a few years before, and I had accumulated some of my own savings. So my financial aid journey at Harvard was a combination of my own savings, a award from the Fulbright, and then I actually didn't get financial aid from Harvard, but that was because at the time I unfortunately was applying in round 3, and that was after the financial aid deadline. So don't take that because that won't be relevant to you anymore. It's actually impossible not to be able to apply for financial aid. So I did need to rely on a loan, but I would say it's unlikely not to need to take a small amount of loan, and Harvard actually doesn't, for this particular program, like to do full scholarships, because it likes students to feel like they have some skin in the game. However, they do have a large endowment, so if you do have financial aid needs, please don't be put off by that. You can get a pretty robust package from the business school in addition to Fulbright.
Viva, thank you very much for your time. It was really great to hear your experience as an HBS alumna. So we've got our next presenter ready.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye-bye. Right, so we are having our first US-based guest today, and we will be talking about our new partnership with the University of Florida. Al, are you ready to go? Let me just try to...
Turn my camera on.
Yeah, just give me a moment. I'll make you a co-host. You should be able to do it now. Here we go.
Okay. And then Renee should be joining us as well. I don't know who the Florida name is there, what that's all about.
That would be me.
Ah, okay.
I've been named Florida.
I renamed myself. Why don't you turn your camera on when you can, Renee, please?
I'm not allowed. Oh, here we go. There I am.
All right, so I guess we get 20 minutes. I will do a brief introduction about University of Florida and our college, and then the real expert here is Renee Goodrich, who is our graduate coordinator in our food science and human nutrition department. So good morning, everybody. So I'm Dr. Ellen Wysocki. I'm one of 2 associate deans in the College of Agricultural and Life Sciences here at the University of Florida. We are very excited to be engaging in this Fulbright opportunity with the UK. And so we hope we get a lot of applications for this program. A little bit about the University of Florida. We are the 6th ranked public university in the nation. And we'll find out soon if we moved up to 5 here in a week or a couple of weeks, I think, or so. Not that rankings are everything, but some of you, I think, care about those things. So I wanted to mention that. The University of Florida, if you don't know, is a fairly large public university. We have over 50,000 students, particularly when we add the number of online students that we have in various programs around campus. The College of Agriculture and Life Sciences is the 4th largest college on campus. And I don't say that to brag, but it's to show you the breadth. We have 23 different undergraduate, 23 different graduate majors. When you add the specializations, it's a lot more choices for students. I just pulled the numbers for the fall that could change slightly as students drop or add here, but currently we have over 6,800 students in the college registered for fall. That includes both degree and non-degree, but very small portion of non-degree. Graduate student wise, we believe the largest amount or number of graduate students of any public land grant university in the US. Right now we're sitting at 2,390 graduate students who are currently enrolled in classes this fall. I will let Renee talk a little bit more about her department. I want to steal that thunder, but we'd be happy to answer questions as we see them. Renee, would you like to share a little bit about the program?
Yeah, so thank you for having us here. I'm here to talk specifically about the food science program, since that's one of the target areas where you're starting with this new program. So as Dr. Wysocki said, I'm the graduate coordinator in the Food Science and Human Nutrition Department. I'll call it FSHN. And we're a department that has dietetics, nutritional sciences, and food science combined together. Today, I'm going to focus on the food science and technology part of our master's program. And so we have in the department about 75 to 80 graduate students, roughly split among the 3 subdisciplines, tracks as we call them in our literature. And we take in students at both the master's and PhD level. And I'll focus on our master's program. So the initial thoughts and some of our initial discussions talked about our master's program. And I'm here to talk to you a little bit more about it. Like many food science disciplines, we cover the major 3 subdisciplines. That's food chemistry, food microbiology, and food processing / engineering. But we also have faculty expertise in areas such as sensory science, and that fits within kind of the sponsors area of color specialty, because again, part of the sensory aspects of food are colors and appearances, but all the other background parts of food science, including the biochemistry. We look at very applied things such as shelf lives of particular new food products, all the way to very basic research looking at mechanisms for functionality, for example, of various products. So our master's students come in generally with a solid STEM background. We don't require a food science background per se. We do require the fundamentals in the life sciences and the hard sciences. So chemistry, organic chemistry, physics, biology, microbiology. And depending on the background of the student is when we begin the customization of their program. Every graduate student has a slightly different background, slightly different interest, and our graduate committees are really the point of management of what exact courses and what exact research project the student's going to undertake. So we bring in students from fields of engineering, biochemistry, chemistry, microbiology, public health, and as long as they have those fundamentals in the STEM background, they have great success in our master's program. We have food science classes that they're required to take. Everybody's required to take at least one class or to have had taken a class in the big three, as we call them: food micro, food chem, food engineering. And then a lot of the additional classes are up to the student and the student's committee. For example, if a student is working on a processing related product, they may take some ag and biological engineering courses. There's room in our curriculum for that. If they're interested in sensory, they may take more chemistry. They may even take psychology. We have a Center for Smell and Taste that we work with. So again, it's a very customizable degree, even at the master's level. Obviously at the PhD level, there's more time to take additional courses, but we do allow and encourage our master's students to go deep into the area of their particular area of research. So I made a few comments. I didn't know exactly how much detail you wanted. The application procedure is fairly well codified on our website, and I think the Fulbright announcement links would have all those websites. But essentially, we look for a certain level of expertise in coursework. We do look at standardized testing, and we do currently require the GRE, although we're always in continued discussion about how that fits into our admission. But the key is really matching the students, the prospective students, with a faculty member here at UF, because even with the Fulbright funding and the tuition reimbursement, they're going to have to work in a lab, and they'll work closely with a specific faculty member. So that's really where my role is, as sort of a matchmaker, connecting the student with a faculty member where they mesh with their interest and goals. And so once the student starts, in their first year is a little bit prescribed in the sense that we have a research course that the students take to teach them how to basically conduct research. And in some cases, students have undergone kind of undergraduate research, increasingly so, but they do take our course, kind of learn the expectations of the department. They take statistics, and they have to take a seminar at the end of their program. Beyond that, and beyond meeting the basics of the three processing, micro, and chemistry courses, at that point, it's up to the student to move from coursework to their research program. For the most part, all of our master's students complete a research thesis, and that is really where any sort of difference in timing comes. Our programs generally run 2 years, but we do have some students, if they're working on an agricultural commodity and the timing of the crops are such that they have to spend an extra semester or two, that's perfectly acceptable. As we tell our students, the research is done when it's completed. In terms of actual coursework, that also can be found online. I don't know how much time I have. What I'd like to emphasize is the fact that I think our department has several key strengths that I think and hope will be of interest to potential Fulbright students. So the first one is just the sheer area of kind of breadth of research. Our faculty members, we have about 14 or 15 faculty members working in the area of food science, but they run the gamut from citrus chemistry and metabolomics of citrus products, which are very important, obviously, to the state of Florida, to working at on toxicology problems, looking at processing, some basic engineering kind of projects, all the way to both theoretical and very applied microbiology. We also have food chemists, and we have strong faculty in sensory science. So we really do have the main areas of food science that a typical food science student would be interested in. We have pretty good funding. I think Elle didn't mention it, but we had record funding this year, and IFAS, CALS, our College of Agriculture, is is one of the largest contributors to the university's overall funding success. We get a lot of grants, not only through commodity sponsorship, but also through USDA and NIH. And again, funding matters because even if a student isn't being funded directly by a grant, in this case, they would be funded through the Fulbright program, that allows the faculty member to have supplies and shared equipment and just the resources to be able to provide a student with a really sound kind of scientific training. Again, going to professional meetings, being able to travel to field sites, et cetera, et cetera. So that's, I think, another strength and potential attraction to the program. I think one of the big ones is we have a very strong advising program. We realize that graduate study is very greatly dependent on the student, and we do ask our students to take responsibility for their education, but they have a huge support network to help them achieve success. We have a very strong student services, which helps us make sure the students meet their milestones, takes care of the paperwork, or actually electronic paperwork these days, and generally keeps the students organized and on track. And then we have a large academic advising component as well. Each student has a mentor, a formal mentor, and a graduate committee, but we also have graduate coordinators like myself who can serve as sounding boards, and also checks and balances on meeting the requirements. And then behind that, we have the whole kind of graduate education effort of the university, which I have to say is a major focus of our university, kind of in its striving to be a top research university. So I think that is an advantage. And then finally, and this pertains to students, international students, as well as domestic students, we have an incredibly large and diverse and successful alumni cohort, especially in food science. Many of our students work in high levels of government here in the US and also in their home countries if they're international students. Many of our students work in consumer goods companies that are international in nature. I have my latest graduate student is working in Coca-Cola in France at the moment. And we do have an active group of our graduate students who remain in contact with each other throughout their careers. And again, those kind of four broad components, I think, are probably the major draws and hopefully of interest to the Fulbright applicants. So with that, that's sort of all I had prepared to talk about, but if there's any questions about specifics or either about UF or the program, I think we're prepared to chat about them.
Thank you very much. So yeah, I just want to emphasize that this is a fully funded award. So it's full tuition and university fees waiver and the stipend. So if you're interested, please do have a look on our website. I do have a question here about this whole idea of work experience. So it's actually a double question. So the first one is whether you favor a work experience during the admission process. And the other bit of the question is what your alumni tend to do after graduation.
So in general, I think there's a few different schools of thought by individual faculty members of students. We always view internships as useful because the more a student understands about the industry, or actually just about practical work experience, it seems it helps them focus better in their graduate coursework, but it's not a requirement. And again, we do have opportunities throughout the graduate program, and I'm not sure exactly how it would work with Fulbright, but quite a few of our students will take an internship at some point in their graduate program. More readily, easy to do with a PhD program since it's already quite a bit longer than a master's degree, but that's a possibility. I do have to say, and I didn't maybe say it strong enough, our graduates of our master's program in particular have multiple job offers when they leave. To me, that's a sweet spot in food science. Employers are looking for people with a good fundamental training in food science, and then that extra kind of initiative that shows that basically a graduate degree shows that a student has, that they're able to work independently, they have some critical thinking skills, they're able to accept kind of ambiguity and understand that working life is not a multiple choice answer. There's more to that. And again, we have very, very good placement for not only our domestic students, but as I said, for international students. And again, we have the program, and Dr. Wysocki can speak to this more about many of our international students stay post-graduation to take advantage of working here in the US for a little while.
Thank you. I have another question about specifically human nutrition. So the person is asking whether, so how this works. So whether they need to do both food science and human nutrition, or whether these are two separate tracks and they can pick either. So if you could talk a little bit about that, that would be great.
But before she does that, would you care to comment from UK Fulbright? I mean, we can do both or either, but I didn't know if we're trying to guide this particular Fulbright to one track or the other based on the founding folks, the donors.
Not really. As long as both are covered by the program, as I said previously, we are happy to go kind of as broad and wide as we can. So we would be happy with either. I think it's more of a question from like the academic sort of like timetable and academic expectations perspective.
So I can't answer that, Al, because at the food science and human nutrition master's level, all the programs are fundamentally the same. We have different tracks, but the expectations and the requirements and even the admission process is similar. We basically call people who are studying in their master's degrees with our nutritional sciences faculty, the nutritional sciences master's students, and those studying with primarily food scientists, the food science students. And it's really the major professor that sort of kind of provides the identity, but the programs are generally the same in scope. Both programs involve coursework and then a significant research effort. And again, on the nutritional sciences side, while I didn't chat much about it, that information is available on the website as well. And that kind of runs the gamut from community nutrition, very applied nutrition, to very clinical kind of biochemistry related nutrition. So we have equal breadth on the nutritional sciences side as I think we offer on the food science side.
Yeah, I think we're very open to it. I mean, the general idea that we were approached to partner here was around food security. Angelina, do you want to talk just briefly about the fact that the unique part of this is in terms of the research from both sides of the pond trying to coordinate?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is, I suspect this is going to raise more questions than answers from me, but this is a very unique opportunity in many ways. And one of them is that the person who gets this award will be partnered with a US or student from the US who will be doing a course in the UK at the University of Reading. We haven't really discussed the details of how exactly this is going to work. And I've had some questions about, are we going to have in-person meetings? I'm like, maybe at some point. So all the details are still to come. But there is this very exciting element of working with your colleague from across the pond, I guess. In this particular area, this may involve organizing an event or a research presentation. As I said, we'll be advertising or kind of providing further information on this in due course. Sadly, we have run out of time. I can see questions coming in, but please do email us at programs@fulbright.org.uk, and we will be very happy to answer your questions or to forward them to our colleagues at the University of Florida. As I said, this is a new award. We're still kind of ironing out quite a few details, but we will get there. So Al and Renee, thank you very much for your time. It was really great to have you here.
Okay, Gary. Yeah, feel free to reach out and have a good rest of the program.
Thank you. Right, and our next partner is here already. Gabriel, are you with us? Let me try to, yes, I'll allow you to, right, to turn your camera on if you would like to. Oh, excellent.
Hey.
Hello.
So nice to be here. Thank you. Should I share my screen and get started?
Yes, please. So you have about 10 minutes and plus or minus, and then we will take some questions.
Wonderful. Okay, everyone can see that. So I am Gabrielle Goodwin. I'm the Director of Graduate Legal Studies at Indiana University Maurer School of Law. And I'm here to talk today about the partnership that we have with Fulbright UK and what we're offering. But I wanted to give you a little background about the Graduate Legal Studies program in Indiana University and the law school generally. Just to give you some information about IU, it is one of the oldest universities in the country, the 9th oldest law school in the United States. Was the first public law school in the Midwest region of the US. We have had a long tradition of awarding LLM degrees, so the Master of Law degree in the US, and we first started awarding such degrees back in 1918. So every year we welcome a variety of students from all over the world, and we're really happy to have them. Bloomington, Indiana, you may not be familiar with, but Indiana, the state of Indiana, is in the Midwest region, which is in fact not in the middle or in the West, but that's how we call it. So you've probably heard of Chicago, and Indiana is south of Chicago, and Bloomington is in the southern part of the state of Indiana. Not too far from some major US cities, and a nice and easy plane ride to New York, for example, or Florida. The law school itself is one of the top law schools in the US, and we've been ranked variety of rankings over the years. Some of our strengths are the tax law program, the IP program, business and commercial law, and international law. And we've received a number of accolades in the recent years about the LLM program itself, as well as some of those programs I mentioned, IP, environmental law, and public interest law. Some of our students do take a double major and do a JD MBA, and the Kelley School of Business at Indiana University is also a top-ranked business school. So just to show you a little bit of what it looks like, this is one of the main entrances to the university campus. These are called the sample gates, and this is kind of the iconic area of the campus and Bloomington itself. It is definitely one of the best college towns. If you think of what does an American college town look like, this is probably it. It really is a beautiful place. The campus is always voted as one of the most beautiful, and I would have to agree with that. All right, and now specifically to our degree programs, something you might be interested in. We have a JD degree, which is the usual law degree for American students to become lawyers. And this takes 3 years. Some of our international lawyers and students that come to our program are able to do both an LLM and a JD degree in a shorter amount of time. And some of them will come in with a background in law already as a practicing attorney, or at least with a first degree in law and are able to carry over some of the credits so that they have advanced standing and can finish that program more quickly. Our LLM degree program is a pretty traditional master's program. It's usually 1 year, 2 semesters. We also have an LLM thesis, which adds an extra semester, but allows a student to work very closely with a faculty member and produce a thesis. We have a new program called the Learning and Working Program, and this is fantastic for anyone that's interested in doing some kind of internship or experiential work. We have legal clinics at the law school for students to participate, pro bono projects, various things around the community as well. We also have a master's of comparative law for people who don't have a first degree in law. And then for anyone thinking of an academic track, we have an SJD and PhD program in law and democracy. The LLM degree can also be specialized. So I've listed here our 6 specializations. And a student doesn't apply for these separately, just decides when admitted to the LLM program if they want to specialize. And then there are a group of core courses that you must take, but then leaving some courses for you to choose over the span of your time in the law school. We do have a number of partnerships around the world, and a lot of our students come from these partnerships, and a lot go back and become professors in these institutions or working with their alumni around the world. We have scholarships for students, for all students. We consider scholarships for tuition. Our tuition currently is about $48,000 US for the whole program. The cost of living in Bloomington, Indiana is around $15,000, we think. This is really quite low compared to some parts of the United States, that big cities that can be quite expensive. Our partner schools and institutions receive a preferred partner scholarship, and that includes, of course, our Fulbright partners. And Fulbright UK, of course, has, I think, quite an exciting partnership and scholarship available to students. So we can talk more about that. And then just if you have any questions or want to connect with us at any point later after today, we'd be happy to talk and provide more information. So I'm going to stop that and see if there are any questions.
Gabrielle, thank you very much. And yes, we do have some questions. But before I move on to the questions, I just want to quickly confirm that. So we've been offering an award with Indiana University for quite some time now, but we are changing it from the next year. So in the past, it used to be just a full tuition fee waiver, which meant that you needed to find those 15K elsewhere to be able to afford the study there. From 2022, the Fulbright Commission will be topping up the tuition fee waiver, and you will be offered a living stipend. So in addition to all the university and tuition fees sort of waived by Indiana University, the Fulbright Commission will be offering you up to $15,000 for 9 months. So again, it's going to be a very exciting, fully funded scholarship. So we do have a couple of questions. So in terms of the application process, you do apply separately to ourselves and to Indiana University. We do our recruitment separately in the sense that I share the names of the people who apply to us with Gabrielle and her colleagues, and they tell me whether they have those applications. So you will be submitting 2 separate applications. And I wonder, Gabrielle, if you can maybe share a few tips on, what you're looking for when you're reviewing people's applications.
Definitely. Yeah, so our application process is obviously submitting transcripts from your previous coursework and letters of recommendation and a statement of purpose. We don't have to worry about language issues usually from applicants from the UK. So those are the main things. And I would say that probably the most important are the letters of recommendation and then your statement of purpose. And I've noticed from working with international students in the past that these can be very different from country to country and culture to culture. So I would say letters of recommendation, the ones that are the most helpful are from people who know you well. And not necessarily the most famous or celebrated people that you might ask. If they don't know you and know your potential, they'll be less helpful. So rather than asking, say, the dean of your school, who maybe has met you once, it would be better to ask a professor that you have worked with, or even an employer that you have worked with closely that can offer a true assessment of your skills and your abilities and your potential. And then for the statement of purpose, this is often a chance for you to explain anything that might be missing from, say, your CV, which is another thing that you should apply with. So if there's something there that really didn't fit into your CV that you would like to talk about, or if there's some kind of gap in your CV, maybe you were out of school for a year for some reason, if relevant, that's a place to talk about that as well. But it's more than just kind of repeating your accomplishments. It's a way for the admissions committee to get to know you. This is our only chance really to get to know who you are. And so a personal statement, something that lets people know who you are, why you want to come to law school in the United States, especially Indiana, how you might fit into the law school. So doing maybe a little bit of research into the environment here, so that you can show that you've thought about it, that you think you can fit, and it's a good fit. And so we don't want anyone who would not be happy here. You know, there's a specific environment in Bloomington, Indiana, that might be different from, say, Los Angeles, California. And so we want to make sure that you recognize that.
Thank you. I actually have a couple of questions here about sort of like student life and the campus. And something, again, people ask us about via email is the fact that, you know, many people have been to New York, many people have been to larger cities, and they feel like law is extremely popular at Fulbright in terms of like the disciplines and the courses. But sometimes people are a little bit hesitant to apply to sort of like smaller universities or the universities located in sort of like smaller towns and places. I myself went to a campus university, and I can absolutely relate to that point that, you know, Bloomington is absolutely beautiful. But I wonder if, you know, there is anything you can say to those people who feel a little bit hesitant about, you know, going to Bloomington.
Yeah, so I mean, I can certainly understand. You might be more familiar with, say, San Francisco and New York than Bloomington. And I would say that, you know, even though Bloomington is not a major city, the campus in Indiana University is a major university. It is, you know, a tier 1 research university. There are departments in every topic you can imagine. There are people coming from everywhere. I think we have now 45,000, maybe more students on campus. So Bloomington really swells with the number of students, and therefore you have access to everything. We have an amazing theater and music department. We have an amazing we have amazing food right out the law school's front door. I would say that probably shopping here in Bloomington is not the greatest, but you can get up to Indianapolis in an hour and Chicago in 3 or 4. So it's you will have all the things you would expect and need as far as a university and law school here. without maybe some of the traffic and craziness of a big city.
Thank you. And a quite specific question, I guess, about sort of like student community and engagement. What about accommodation? So would you say that the majority of your postgraduate students live off campus, on campus? Sort of how does that work? And like, is there any information you're able to share?
Yeah, so we have the office here that helps students coming in to find housing and work with students for any issues like that. My colleagues here in the office are wonderful. And most of our students live off campus. We do have some that live in the dorms, and that's fine. There are grad student dorms here that are available. Most, however, and we have a house that has many of our international law students that live together, but there are a variety of different things that are possible and available here, and really ranging in budget as well. You can live by yourself, you can live with roommates. And so we do help students, work with students to make sure that they find suitable living accommodation for whatever their needs are.
Thank you. And the final question is about eligibility. Someone is asking whether they can apply if they have an LLM, which they've obtained in the UK. So how is that viewed by the admissions team?
I think that's completely fine. So as long as you have some kind of first degree in law, and that could be a bachelor's level or master's level, that is fine. You are eligible to apply.
And I just want to add, from the sort of Fulbright Commission's perspective, if you do have a master's and if you're applying for another master's in the US, we obviously recognize the differences and sort of the benefit of doing another master's, but you are expected to communicate that quite clear to us in your personal statement or your study objective why you feel that you need another master's, whether it's the same academic area or something slightly different. So please keep that in mind. But just to reiterate, you do not become ineligible simply because you hold a degree at the same level. So you are still eligible to apply. And I think that was the last question for you, Gabrielle. That's kind of perfect timing. It's 4:30 now. So thank you very much for your presentation, for your time. It was really great to meet you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for arranging everything. It was wonderful to meet you, and good luck with everything.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Okay, so our next partner will be joining us in a moment, and that will be, I think, Brown University PhD Award. So they're running a little bit late, so I think we have a couple of minutes break. I think we've covered the questions about accommodation, and we just had our partner who offers the LLM award. So if you have any further questions about that while we're waiting for our next partner to join us, please feel free to submit the questions. My colleague is very kindly helping me with your questions, so we will either cover your questions during the presentation or we'll try to answer to you in writing. I have a question to repeat something. Can you please clarify in the Q&A box what exactly you would like me to confirm? Oh, right. Okay, so our next partner is ready. Just Tal, give me a moment. I will make you a co-host. Okay, so excellent. Everything is working, I think. So Tal, whenever you're ready, you should be able to share your screen if you would like to, and you can go ahead with your presentation.
Great, thank you and good afternoon. Thank you very much, first of all, to all of you for being here to learn more about Brown and what Brown offers with respect to doctoral education. I also very much want to thank my colleagues at the UK Fulbright Commission for their work in putting this together, Angelina in particular. I am Thomas A. Lewis. I am the Associate Dean of Academic Affairs and the Co-Deputy Dean of the Graduate School here at Brown University. Part of what that means is I work with both graduate students and graduate programs from across the university, comparative literature, computer science, Africana studies, history, English, data science, etc. One of the things I love about this position is getting to learn about so many different academic fields. At the same time, I'm also a faculty member in the Department of Religious Studies, where I continue to work with graduate students in my own discipline. What I want to do today is provide a brief overview of some of the highlights of doctoral education at Brown. I'll then spend a little bit of time talking about what I think of as characterizing the distinctiveness of Brown, and I certainly want to allow time for questions from all of you. So I've got a couple of slides that I wanted to share with you, just to give you a sense of the institution. Brown has more than 1,600 doctoral students every year. We typically have a few more than 250 new PhD students coming in every year, distributed across 51 PhD programs across the humanities, social sciences, life sciences, and physical sciences. And one of the things I would really encourage you to do is to be sure to look at Brown's graduate school website. Should be very easy to find. And then you can look at the listings of programs. We certainly offer PhD programs across many, many different disciplines. We think of graduate education as absolutely central to the mission of the university. Right? We talk about the mission of Brown as serving the community, the nation, and the world by discovering, communicating, and preserving knowledge and understanding in a spirit of free inquiry, and by educating and preparing students to discharge the offices of life with usefulness and reputation. One of the things that I love about working in doctoral education, working with doctoral students, is the opportunity to work with students at this moment that is absolutely at the core of this mission. Graduate students play a central role in advancing research at the university, both on their own and in collaboration with other students and faculty. They also play important roles in developing as instructors in their own right. And in that way, they function in a manner that's really quite central to what the institution as a whole does. The Fulbright Postgraduate Student Award at Brown provides full funding for graduate students through at least 5 years. Some of our programs extend beyond that, and we are able to provide funding in those cases. But what I want to emphasize is that what we want to do is provide you with the funding and support in collaboration with the UK Fulbright Commission to make sure you can thrive as a graduate student. Students in our PhD programs have tuition covered, health insurance, dental insurance, but also a generous living stipend that allows them to focus their energies and efforts on their educational experience and training. Over the course of those years of graduate education, some of that time will be on a fellowship appointment, which means that you would simply be in courses or perhaps writing exams or working on the dissertation. At other times, serving as a teaching assistant, a research assistant, or perhaps a proctor. The distribution of those will vary by the academic discipline, but the idea is to provide a range of opportunities that allow students to develop as instructors and researchers in their fields. We also talk a lot with students about the value of external fellowships. Obviously, those students participating in the Fulbright Postgraduate Student Award are already doing that, but we also see students who then go on to apply for additional fellowships, perhaps another Fulbright to be conducting field research abroad, or other kinds of dissertation fellowships. At the same time, we recognize that supporting students is not only a matter of the funding for your stipend and tuition, but also making sure that students, regardless of their discipline, have opportunities to attend professional conferences, to conduct the kind of research that they need to do, which may involve traveling to archives, libraries, laboratories, or just in other cities, say, to do field work for the sake of writing their dissertations. We provide extensive opportunities for conference travel, for research travel funds and international travel funds. And we also recognize that absolutely integral elements of the training are also beyond the student's department itself. So we think of that partly in terms of the Global Mobility Research Fellowship, which can be used for students who might need to go and study with a faculty member at another institution for one particular part of their project. I'll talk in a moment about the open graduate education and the doctoral certificates. And just to mention briefly, the Sheridan Center for Teaching and Learning, which has tremendous resources for students working on developing their background and experience as teachers. And then other centers such as the Kogut Institute for the Humanities, the Pembroke Center for Women and Gender Studies, that provide additional support sources of intellectual community, as well as social community beyond the department level. Now, I want to say more about other aspects of what I think really makes Brown stand out. Beyond the outstanding faculty, outstanding students and facilities, a key part of what makes Brown Brown is a commitment to fostering cutting-edge research that moves across traditional academic and disciplinary boundaries. I think of Brown as an institution as deeply marked by a commitment to interdisciplinarity and to scholarly inquiry that's driven by student interests. It's a matter of culture in that I think it's deeply ingrained in Brown, but I think one of the other pieces that's distinctive about Brown is its scale. The graduate programs at Brown are smaller than certain institutions, and part of what that means is that going from the Department of Chemistry over to the Department of Engineering or the School of Engineering, or from archaeology over to Africana Studies or to data science, is not necessarily a long journey. Right? I mean that both literally, physically it's not that far away, but metaphorically as well. We have lots of people who cross those kinds of boundaries. At the graduate level, this is manifest in several different ways. I would highlight our open graduate education program that enables students who are already pursuing their PhD in one field here at Brown to apply for additional funding to support their simultaneously pursuing a master's in another field. And we think of this as a tremendous opportunity for students to really drive forward what scholarship looks like in their home discipline. So to give you a couple of examples, a student in archaeology who's also pursuing a master's in computer science to be able to do the kind of computer modeling of archaeological sites that are crucial to that student's research. Similarly, a student in chemistry who might be pursuing a master's in data science, or a student in Italian studies pursuing a master's in theater and performance studies. The open graduate education is for those pursuing an entire master's in another field. We also have the doctoral certificates that enable students to pursue roughly half a master's in another area. We have these in gender and sexuality studies, collaborative humanities, science and technology studies, and a range of other areas. And I think that perhaps more fundamentally, we see this commitment to interdisciplinarity in just the everyday taking of courses in other departments. So that a student in engineering is not only taking courses in engineering, and a student in English is not only taking courses in English. So I hope that you'll think very much about this opportunity. Brown is located in Providence, Rhode Island. We're nicely situated about an hour from Boston, 3 to 4 hours from New York, depending on traffic. That also means that there are tremendous opportunities for collaborating with other institutions in this part of the country. And I'm happy to answer questions both about Brown and about our collaboration with the UK Fulbright Commission. So let me pause there and open things up for your comments or questions.
Thank you very much for your presentation. And yeah, we do have a couple of questions. So the first one is more funding related. So I just want to confirm here that the Fulbright funding does not come on top of Brown University's funding. Brown University are incredibly generous, so I'm afraid we are not in a position to offer an additional, I don't know how much. We do offer, so the only additional financial benefit is the travel grant. So I think it's $500. It's on our website. So that comes from the Fulbright Commission, and you will receive that on top of the Brown University funding package. With regard to the programs covered by the award, so this is specifically, so what we've covered just now, this is specifically for PhDs. Tal, I wonder whether you can talk a little bit about how this whole kind of master's and PhD works. We have like a specific question. I myself wasn't actually aware of that. As far as we're concerned, we are mainly considering people for PhD study, but I understand that they can do masters alongside their PhD work.
Yeah, so a couple of great questions there. I guess one of the things I would just want to be sure to point out, as someone who, while I was doing my PhD here in the US, but spent substantial time in Germany doing field work, and the kinds of opportunities to connect with institutions like Fulbright and develop that connection that are about lifelong networks of scholars, I think of as a tremendous benefit beyond the additional travel money and this kind of thing. So, you know, when one thinks about what the value of doing this through Fulbright versus applying directly to exclusively through Brown, I certainly think of those additional advantages as well and want to mention those. So in terms of funding for master's programs, so there are a few different ways I think about that. So on the one hand, students who are in the PhD programs at Brown can be applying for the master's program, say applying for the open graduate education program. So say again, you come in as a PhD student in philosophy, you want to do substantial work in cognitive science because that bears on parts of the work that you're doing in philosophy, and that you would apply to this program that provides additional fellowship funding. And what it does is it doesn't extend your time to degree, but it relieves you of some other expectations to enable you to do that. That would be covered in this case by Brown. We are also just newly developing an additional collaboration with the UK Fulbright Commission that focuses on 2 of our Master of Fine Arts master's programs. So this is the literary arts program as well as the playwriting. Those are shorter than a PhD, not surprisingly. So generally 2-year programs. Those would also have funding levels for those years very similar to the PhD program. So we should have more information available about those. Brown also has a large range of additional master's programs. Those are generally not covered through the UK Fulbright collaboration, but you know, maybe as a reminder, just in terms of the UK educational system, we do have many students who go directly from the bachelor's applying into the PhD programs. So those students in that situation can typically also have a master's, what we call a transitional master's, conferred usually after about 2 years. It depends on the program. That is still while you're doing that as a PhD student and therefore would be fully funded. So I hope that answers the range of questions there.
Thank you. I also have a question, and this question is something we get quite a lot via email, about finding a suitable supervisor. So is this something applicants are encouraged to do before they apply to both Brown and Fulbright? Is this kind of, you do that in parallel with your applications, or how does this kind of process work?
So that's a fantastic question that bears not just on this program, but thinking about graduate school more generally. We very much encourage students to reach out to the program, reach out to the director of graduate study. If you go to the department website, it's easy to find who the director of graduate study is. Reach out to them. Also reach out to particular faculty in your area. And depending upon the discipline and your area, that may be one key person. In other cases, it may be 2 or 3 people. There is a range of possibilities in terms of, we have some of our programs that really have a close match, that once from the time you're admitted, there's a kind of, it's already anticipated that this is the person you'll work with as your primary doctoral advisor. In other cases, there's greater flexibility than that. But in either case, I would really encourage you to reach out to faculty who do work in areas that you're interested in. Some of them, have conversations with students, others correspond more via email, but it's a really great way to get a clearer sense of what the opportunities are for you at Brown. And I would recommend that for any university. So.
Thank you. And I also might want to remind everyone that we have changed the deadline specifically for the Brown University Award this year. So one of the requirements is securing admission to Brown first. So you have until the 4th of April 2022 to apply to us. So please keep that in mind. It used to be different. So if you've looked at the website before, please have another look just to make sure you're aware of the new deadline. Another question I have is about opportunities to travel abroad. So Tal, you've talked about, going to conferences, doing research, kind of elsewhere, going on field trips. Would you say that your students have opportunities to go abroad to do any kind of work? It's a bit of a broader question, but would you say that, whether you provide any additional funding for that, is this common? Does this depend on the program, which I assume is the case?
Absolutely. So I did want to mention, just in terms of the deadlines, the application deadlines for most of our doctoral programs are either December or January, and if it's January, it typically is very early January. So be sure to be paying attention to those deadlines in the particular program that you're in. Those are pretty firm deadlines, so you really do need to make sure you're on top of that and getting the relevant materials in. And obviously, that's quite a bit later than the UK Fulbright deadline itself. The piece about travel abroad, it's both international travel as well as domestic travel in the US, depending on the kind of research that students are doing, are absolutely integral to graduate education. Exactly how much travel there is, what it looks like, will vary depending on your discipline, and even within a discipline, there may be some students who need to go and spend a year doing archival research in Italy. There may be others who are doing archival research in another part of the world. In the Philippines, maybe given the nature of their research, they only need to be there for a couple of months. Brown offers a range of opportunities for those kinds of funding. So some of that is built in as part of the dissertation fellowship year, that students can use that to go where they need to. In addition, students are able to apply for opportunities like the Global Mobility Fellowship, and then just smaller pots of funding. Summer is a really important time, obviously, for certain kinds of preliminary research, and so we make funds available for students to do that. There's typically an application process, but we're quite committed to making substantial funds for that available. We also encourage students to apply for other kinds of travel fellowships that may be relevant. We think that's good professional development.
Thank you. And one more question. I think everyone got really excited about this opportunity to do a master's alongside their PhD.
Yes.
Would you say that applicants are expected to kind of discuss that in their application, or is this something they tend to find out while doing their PhD research? That, actually they need to work on sort of like a different skill set. So would you recommend to sort of like cover that in the personal statement, or is it okay to do it later, basically?
It's certainly okay to do it later. You may, depending on your interests, you may write in your statement of purpose, and that statement of purpose is a really important part of that application. You may want to write that you have interest in this program. but it really first year applying to the PhD program. And very generally, it's in their second or third year of the PhD program that students are accepted into the open graduate education program, because we really want to prioritize students getting off to a really strong start in their PhD program and not being too scattered. So again, typically it's a little further into the program. You don't need to decide that right away, but please do keep that in mind.
Oh, thank you very much. We've unfortunately run out of time, but it was great to meet you. I must say I've learned a lot about your program, so I think we should do that a little bit more often. So yeah, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to email those to us, and then we can discuss that by email. So Tal, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you. Very good I wish I got to see you, but please feel free to email me directly. Also, thomas_lewis@brown.edu. Thank you and have a good afternoon. Thank you so much, Angelina. Bye.
Bye. Okay, and our next partner is here as well. So we've got Kieran from Bafta. I will make you a co-host at the moment, so that you can turn your camera on if you would like to. Hello, Kieran.
Hello. Hi, Angelina. How are you?
How are you? I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. All right. Thanks for having me.
Is everything fine? Any tech support?
Yeah, I think we're all good. Do you want me to
Okay.
go
Yeah,
ahead?
if you're ready. Yeah, yes, please.
Okay, will do. So hi, I'm Kieran Tone. I work for the British Academy of Film and Television Arts, or Bafta. Bafta is a UK-based arts charity that has offices in Los Angeles and New York. I manage our some of our US learning and new talent programs over here. I've been based in the US for about 13 years. I've worked for Bafta on in both LA and New York. I'm currently based in New York. So my areas of work include programs for students at high schools in underserved areas, mentorship programs for first generation college students. I manage our postgraduate scholarship program, and a variety of other sort of talent development and networking programs for emerging international filmmakers based in the US. All of those programs involve looking for talents that's worthy of BAFTA support in some way, and finding the best way to provide that support, whether it's in the form of funding, providing publicity, or mentorship and guidance, or all of the above. So I've been working on our scholarship program for about 10 years now. We've offered scholarships to British students studying in the US since 1993, but usually in amounts ranging from $5,000 to $10,000. So we're very pleased to be able to partner with Fulbright to offer a much more impactful grant. 2022 will be our third year offering the Fulbright Bafta scholarship, and we're very proud of the 2 students that we've been able to support in our first 2 years. Worldwide, Bafta offers over $250,000 of scholarships, mostly in the UK and the US. And while we do have some scholarships for US citizens and other international students in the US, the bulk of our US funds are for British or UK students studying here. And the vast majority of our scholarships tend to be for postgraduate study. As I said, we've been offering scholarships in the US for sort of almost 20 years, and we've supported some filmmakers who've gone on to very impressive careers. Some of our former scholars are currently working on the TV show Top Boy, if you're familiar with that. One of them is a co-writer on the upcoming Ghostbusters movie. But we also have some who've remained in education and are teaching at film schools in the US and elsewhere around the world. And several are now members of our organization. So we are an organization that's driven by our members. We have roughly 10,000 members worldwide. a little over 2,000 of whom are based in the US, which is why we have substantial branches here, primarily to provide those members with services. And our members are working across every sector in every conceivable creative role in the film, TV, and games industries. Our members vote in our award shows, they sit on our elected committees and boards, and they're always involved in the selection process for our scholarships. So each year when we come to consider scholarship applicants, either for the Fulbright Bafta scholarship or for our other scholarships, process is roughly the same. We try to put together a review group that encompasses a diverse array of professions and backgrounds drawn from our membership, as well as we also add in previous scholarship recipients. We find that sort of mix of working professionals from our members alongside individuals who have fairly recent experience of postgraduate study creates a nice mix of perspectives. And additionally, once we review our applications, if we feel we need a particular field of expertise in our selection panel, we will look for it. For example, this year we had several applicants for the Fulbright Bafta scholarship who were composers intent on studying composition for the screen. So we brought some composers into the selection panel. So I want to tell you a few things about sort of what our scholarship panel is looking for, what we're looking for in a scholar, before I start to talk about sort of the eligibility and sort of criteria. So I think in general, because our members are working professionals, I think they're on the lookout for future colleagues. So they're looking for a future cinematographer they can be working with down the line, or a producer they can see running a production company in a few years. There's definitely an angle to how BAFTA members look at applications, and I think it's partly about assessing their professional and artistic potential. The majority of our applicants for our scholarships tend to be studying MFAs or intend on studying MFAs, and probably most of those are in directing or writing. We of course accept applications from students studying any disciplines that directly relate to filmmaking, producing, screenwriting, editing, cinematography, production design. But we will also consider students of journalism, certain business courses, music composition, design, visual effects, writing that isn't necessarily screenwriting specifically, anything that can be applied to the world of filmmaking, as long as the applicant can demonstrate that they intend to apply that discipline to the practical art forms of the moving image. So basically, you don't have to be studying at a film school or an exclusively film-related course in order to qualify. There isn't a list of qualifying courses. We're very much open to anything with the above caveat. If you're studying something that you intend to apply to filmmaking in some way, we'll consider it. The only exceptions, actually, I say we're open to almost anything, but the one exception is acting. We don't offer an acting scholarship at the moment, and we also don't support students of film theory. It has to be a practical film course. But we do expect our applicants to be preparing for, we expect in general for them to be preparing for careers as artists or practitioners in our industry. And we expect that what they're studying to be a sort of a step on that road to a career in our industry. So applicants are, of course, required to submit a portfolio of their work. And while we don't expect polished work in that application, we do expect applicants to have engaged seriously with their disciplines. We expect that to be able to use their portfolio to gauge their talents and their abilities. Occasionally we see people who look good on paper, but then their supporting materials are thin. I think if you plan to study at the MFA level in the US, we expect to be able to see evidence of your talent. We can't judge that unless you've done some work in whatever field it is you're planning to study in. Our members participate in the selection process, and in addition to looking at the level of talent displayed by the applicant and the seriousness of their academic pursuits, they tend to look closely at the way the candidates talk in their essays about their expectations for their careers and the feasibility of those expectations and goals. So they tend to look first for signs of talent, which of course is a difficult thing to define or explain. It's sort of a combination of proficiency and originality. But then they look at how people talk about their career post MFA or MA or whatever it is. I think that we're also naturally looking for applicants with a distinct and original voice, someone from a background or with a perspective you don't often see, where there's a certain passion and authenticity in their work. But yeah, so the supporting materials that are submitted with the application are incredibly important. Once someone is selected for a Bafta scholarship, they receive access to our programming, and that includes the Fulbright Bafta scholars. So during the entire time they're a student, they can have access to Bafta's event programming in Los Angeles and New York, which might at some point include in-person programming, although we're not doing that at the moment. Everything's online, but there will always be digital events and networking sessions for those who are based outside of our 2 hubs in LA and New York. And this is something I know our scholars have really valued in the past. Sometimes American universities can be somewhat isolated when they're even when they're in a major city. And additionally, it provides professional connections that sometimes you don't have an opportunity to sort of pursue